Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Moving with Chronic Pain presentation today for the webinar. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'm excited to have you here. So to introduce myself, my name is Harpreet, and I'm a kinesiologist here at the Center of Clinical Excellence and Veterans of First Responders Health. And I work with veterans and first responders to help them integrate movement into their daily lives, supporting them on their journey toward improved health and well-being. And in my free time, I enjoy team-based activities, savoring delicious meals, preferably that someone else has cooked for me, and diving into a good book or unwinding with a fun TV show. So you may notice that I refer quite a bit of this presentation back to veterans and first responders because that is a population that we serve and help here at the center. I'm excited to talk to you about a pretty important topic when it comes to movement, and that's chronic pain. Something that we know that many veterans and first responders experience is chronic pain, especially with all the experiences that they've been through. So I hope that today you're able to take away some information and apply it to yourselves. And today we're going to talk about a little bit of what is chronic pain. So we'll define it. We're going to talk about the nervous system and the relationship between the chronic pain and nervous system. We'll also talk about thresholds, pre and post injury or trauma, and what that looks like, because this is going to be important to understanding how to move with chronic pain. We'll talk about getting started again and strategies to cope with chronic pain. And then at the end, you'll find my contact information in case any of you have any questions. So some important definitions. We're going to talk about chronic pain. So this particular definition of chronic pain is pain lasting longer than its expected period of recovery, and it can occur after an injury, incident, repetitive forces, and even mental health trauma. And the reason for that, and the reason why I like this definition, is it acknowledges that even mental health can contribute to chronic pain. Our body, based off a lot of research, we know that it stores quite a bit of trauma, and it can present itself in the form of chronic pain. And so our nervous system, as you can see, it's a very vast system. It connects pretty much everything in our body. And so there are many things that it's responsible for. And the nervous system, it consists of the brain, the spinal cord, and these two make up the central nervous system. Peripheral nerves, my apologies, and that is nerves in and around our body that aren't the brain and spinal cord. So they're the ones that you find in your limbs and other parts of your body. And we have various receptors, and some of these receptors are responsible for detecting temperature, sensation, touch, friction, pressure, and pain. And two primary roles of the nervous system is to protect us, and that includes even from our own selves, and to send signals from the brain to the body and receive signals from the body as well. So how are chronic pain and the nervous system related? So this is a great graph that I like to show. And this is just based off of a typical injury. So let's look at this graph and imagine you just got hurt. So for example, you sprained your ankle. We'll just take that as an example. And when we first get hurt, we see the inflammation, and it's usually accompanied by a lot of pain. And so the graph goes up, pain levels go up because you just got hurt. And that's the nervous system's way of telling our body that we are hurt and we need attention. After all, the nervous system is just trying to protect us. And we have a video on stages of recovery that I encourage you all to check out if you'd like more information, because there's a lot more in-depth explanations of how stages of healing works there. Anyhow, so as we just got hurt, pain levels go up, and as time goes on, we usually will heal with the time. And as time goes on, our pain levels associated with our tissues will go down. So that is what we typically see. However, with chronic pain, it's a little bit different. So what we see in individuals that develop chronic pain is, although time is going on, their healing time continues, that pain still starts to plateau and it doesn't actually get low. And so what we see here is the pain that continues is actually more associated with the nervous system than it is with the actual tissues. And over time, this can become quite frustrating and limiting. So what contributes to developing chronic pain? And there are several, but the two that we're going to talk about is the first one, lack of exercise during injury recovery. So the first is when we're not engaging in the appropriate exercise or movement during the actual injury recovery process. So during the second stage of healing, called proliferation, it is imperative that we incorporate some gentle movements and then eventually load to the site of injury. Although our body knows that it needs to heal, it doesn't know how we need it to heal. So it knows that we need to patch things up because maybe something is bleeding or things have been torn, but it doesn't know which directions to lay down the muscle fibers. And it doesn't realize that we need to be able to do certain movements unless we tell it to. So for example, if we need to raise our arm overhead, which is something that we need to be able to do, we need to practice slowly while we're recovering to lower or raise our arm overhead. And when we do that, it signals our body and our nervous system that it needs to lay down certain muscle fibers in directions that will allow us to do that. So there's, again, a lot more information in our stages of recovery video, and I won't go too in depth with it right now. But if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. And then if you're unsure of how to engage in proper movement and exercise while you're healing, it's important to get some guidance and direction from your professional healthcare practitioner, such as a kinesiologist or a physiotherapist. And it doesn't have to be an abundant amount of exercise during injury recovery. Some and then gradually increasing is a great way to start. And the second type or second reason where we may develop chronic pain is disregarding your body signals and pushing too hard. And this is the second most common reason why people may develop chronic pain is they disregard their body signals and push too hard. And when it comes to veterans or first responders, the message is usually to push hard and push through the pain. However, that doesn't serve a purpose when it comes to healing. So like I said before, our nervous system's job is to protect us, and that includes ourselves, and it knows us better than we know ourselves. And so when we don't listen to our body, it will need to slowly start speaking louder and louder until it gets our attention and we listen to what it needs. And if that is rest or doing certain things, it will tell us to. And so when it comes to healing and chronic pain, we need to work with our nervous system and have it trust us. And in order to do that, we need to listen to what our body's needs are. And so we may feel frustrated and angry about the injury and healing time that it takes, which is fair. And at the same time, we need to recognize that our body needs to heal gradually, and it can't be expected to heal at a rapid pace. And sometimes active duty members that are out, they may not have the choice to push through whatever they need to push through so that they can get the duty done. And over time, something that we hear quite a bit of veterans say is that accumulates and they start feeling their body a lot more, through chronic pain a lot more after they've retired or post-service. And that will take us into pain thresholds. And this is important because when we learn how pain thresholds work, we can gradually work with them versus pushing through them, which will then help our body or help our nervous system versus not. So this first graph, what we see here is before an injury or trauma, our threshold for tissue damage is quite high. And what accompanies this high tolerance is our tolerance for pain or physical stress. And this can be due to good health conditions like strength and flexibility. So prior to an injury occurring, unless it's a sudden injury, for example, like something fell on us that we didn't expect, our body will always send signals that something is dangerous or unsafe. So for example, we lift something from the ground, but we don't bend our knees and we lift with our back. Our back muscle will send signals to the brain that it's straining a lot or that the task isn't safe. And we humans, on the other hand, have become quite good at ignoring these signals and so still push past this and then boom, the person had thrown out their back or have gotten hurt. These alarm bells or alarm signals will occur pretty closely to right before the tissue damage actually occurs. So here. So there's a lot of room for us to catch ourselves before something happens. With chronic pain, the graph looks a little bit different. So this is the chronic pain one. Our tolerance for tissue damage is lower because we've already experienced the hurting and the pain of that injury site, and we've actually damaged it before. But one of the big differences between pre-injury and chronic pain thresholds is when the alarm bell goes off. So unlike the pre-injury graph, where the alarm bell goes off right before the tissue damage, in the chronic pain, it's almost halfway down. So the alarm bell will go off right before any actual tissue damage will actually occur. So our tolerance for stressors and activity automatically become lower. The second difference is after the alarm bell has gone off, and if, let's say, we continue to push past through it, because a lot of the signaling that veterans and first responders learn is to push past through things, is another symptom called a flare-up. And flare-ups occur when we push past through the alarm bell and we continue to push through activity just to get something done or whatever it may be. And at this point, many people will find their flare-ups quite debilitating, or at least it'll hinder a lot of their movement so that they have no choice but to rest it. And if we look closely at the flare-up signal here, you'll see that it's still further away from any actual tissue damage before any tissue or real tissue damage actually occurs. So overall, these graphs show that in a chronic pain body, signals go off well before any actual tissue damage occur and is likely to occur. And it's not that our body tells us that we are close to damaging ourselves, it's that our nervous system goes off before it actually needs to, because it's just trying to protect ourselves. And so this can make moving or getting active quite tricky because it limits what we can do. So what can we do? What can we do to implement these strategies so that we can get moving with chronic pain? And so there's a few things that we're going to talk about. First one being, pick something that's actually meaningful to us. Pick a meaningful activity that you care, because you're more likely to stick with it compared to something that you don't like. We also want to establish a baseline, and this is really important because this will tell us where our pain thresholds are and how to work with the nervous system versus against it. So establishing a baseline can be tricky, and sometimes it takes trial and error if you're doing it on your own. However, if you work with a physio or a kin, they can do functional testing, which is where they will measure your tolerance in a gradual and controlled manner. If you do this on your own, you'll find that you may experience those flare-ups or those alarm bells going off. But I encourage you all to learn and understand the information that it came with versus being completely discouraged. So for example, maybe you decided to go for a walk. You go for a walk, you went for maybe a 15-minute walk and you came back, and then the next day you found that you were in quite a bit of pain. So what we learned from that is that 15 minutes right now is too much. Maybe you need to scale back to 10. And then once the flare-up has settled and you try again those 10 minutes, and then the next day you found that you were okay. So that tells us 10 minutes is what your activity level is. And instead of jumping 5 minutes, maybe you jump 30 seconds to a minute at a time so that your nervous system has the time to gradually accustom itself to more activity. You want to set up a schedule to help with the adherence, and it may help with accountability as well. So how many days a week do you have the tolerance for at the moment? What time do you want to go and do these activities? By setting a schedule, it will create a routine into your daily life, and that familiarity will also help with the nervous system because it's going to know, okay, Mondays and Wednesdays, she goes for a walk in the evenings. We know what's coming, it's safe. We also want to set smart goals. So this is setting specific, measurable, meaningful, this is important, achievable, action-oriented. And action-oriented means what are the actions that you're going to take so that you work towards your goals, realistic and timely goals. And you want to progress gradually, not avoiding nor speeding through things, progressing gradually and as tolerated. So remember to pace yourself. We want to work with our nervous system so that we can progress with our activity tolerance and not against it. We want it to start trusting us again. And the way to do it is by listening and responding. When you come back for, let's say, your walk, you do some of the stretches that maybe you've been taught to ease that tension from your body and give it some of that love and care that it needs. Activities like walking, biking, and stretching are safe and a great way to start with activity again, and then gradually introducing more and different kinds of activities. This may not necessarily be, walking and biking may not be applicable to you, but if there's other things that you know your body likes, I encourage you to pick them. If you're a swimmer, just getting into the pool, waving your arms in and out, seeing how that feels, and then getting more into the swimming is another example. Pacing also applies to strength training. So start small and low, and then slowly and gradually increase the resistance. So just like with aerobic exercise, which is that cardio, that walking and biking, with strength training, you also will need to find your baseline. And so same thing may occur where maybe you lift too much or you did too many reps, and the next day the alarm bells have obviously gone off, but so it has a flare up. You give it the time it needs to rest, and then I encourage you again to go back and learn from that information and try at a lower weight or a lower number of sets and reps. And if you're unsure or you don't feel safe doing it yourself, again, getting in contact with a healthcare practitioner that can help you with this. Fighting through the pain mentality does not serve a purpose when it comes to tissue healing and working with chronic pain. Yes, there are moments where we need to push. However, this is not one of those cases. And this can be quite tricky for veterans and first responders because for many, many years, this is the messaging that they've received. And this is the messaging that your nervous system has learned and been taught. And so making that shift initially can feel very uncomfortable. And it could also be that you may feel like you haven't done a lot, but your nervous system is saying otherwise. And so it's a bit of an issue when it comes to identity and also learning how to make that adjustment. But when we're able to get into that and learn how to work with the nervous system, working and moving with chronic pain becomes so much easier. So when we work with the nervous system, we gradually build tolerance for more and more activity and thus improving quality of life. And so when we work with the nervous system, it learns to trust us again and gradually allows for more activity to be tolerated when we move. And then we gain all those benefits such as benefits of exercise, such as cardiovascular, respiratory, musculoskeletal, and immune system benefits. And then other strategies include establishing pain control relief strategies. Now, this is important because you might be thinking, Harpreet, if I had pain control, I couldn't or I wouldn't be here. There's pain all the time, right? And so when I say pain control, I'm not saying something that's going to take away your pain completely and altogether. What I mean by this is where you have a few strategies that you can implement to at least bring down your pain. And if it takes it away, even better, but at least there's something that you know that if you do, it will lower your pain that you feel after the activity. So it could be stretches or using a hot pack or a cold pack, or, taking hot shower feels good, or, that if you stand for a while, you need to sit. Whatever it may be, knowing what those strategies are so that you can implement them should any alarm bells go off, or if you start to creep up towards that flare-up zone. And then pacing, because like I've been saying, it's super important to work with the nervous system versus against it. Getting a professional to monitor and guide you is also a great way to get started, because this will also help ease anxiety, because you know that there is someone that knows how to work with chronic pain and will do so in a safe manner. And so when it comes to chronic pain, people can get quite uncomfortable or anxious with moving again because flare-ups suck and no one wants to go through them. And so when we know that there is a professional that guides us and is able to establish those baselines with us, it can help take some of that anxiety and fear away. And starting with gentle exercise and activity. It doesn't have to be that you go in and play a bunch of sports or do crazy amount of weightlifting. It doesn't have to be any of those things. It can start by simple such as stretches, yoga, or doing some walking, biking, swimming, or even just some household things, just practicing moving up and down the stairs at home, whatever it may be. Incorporating some movement throughout the day as part of your typical routine. So mindfulness-based exercise, this helps build our mind-body connection. That is so important when it comes to the nervous system. And when we start paying attention to the signals our body sends, we can act accordingly and build trust with our nervous system again. And education on flare-ups and chronic pain is super important. It can be scary when we don't know what's happening, and this can bring up a lot of fear and anxiety. And so it helps to know and understand what is happening and why it's happening so that you're able to manage the symptoms a lot better. and understanding the power of words and vocal tone. Our nervous system is always paying attention, and it listens and hears to everything we say. So when we use words like monstrous amount of pain or something was horrendous, our nervous system picks up on those things and it further uses those words to reduce your activity tolerance. And so it teaches your body and the mind that whatever that was monstrous or horrendous wasn't safe, even if all you did was stand or walk to another room. So I encourage you all to be mindful of the words that we use and gradually work on developing that mindful mind-body connection through things like yoga. So to summarize, the nervous system and chronic pain are related. The healing process looks different for someone that has chronic pain, and chronic pain development is also going to be different depending on how you engaged in the healing process. Our pain thresholds change from pre-injury and chronic pain. Typically, pre-injury lower umbrella is much higher, whereas with chronic pain, it's much lower. Therefore, our tolerance for activity is much lower. We need to gradually begin to reintroduce activity. We can't just go full throttle. And we need to work with the nervous system, and that is by listening and pacing. And we need to have multiple strategies in place to get moving with chronic pain again. And so I thank you so much for your time. I hope there was something valuable in this presentation that you've learned or was something new. And I encourage you all to check out some of our other videos that we have, or also alternatively, I encourage you all to check out our website, which is www.vfrh.ca for our other services and other programs that we have to help our veterans and first responders. Thank you so much.